Hi, I'm Stacey.
And I'm Melissa.
And we're your Hairlocs besties. Today we're going to be taking you through our hair day. We get together every month and we do each other's hair.
Having your hair done helps promote you for potential extension clients.
Today I'm going to be switching Melissa into our new wefts.
So guys, follow along.
When I'm color matching a client, I like to take my color ring and go off of the ends of my client's hair. So she is pretty blonde with like a cooler tone, but she also wants some dimension through her hair, and we can achieve that with the wefts. So I'm going to take a small piece of the swatch, and that will give it the most accurate color match to her hair. So this is going to be a nice seamless blend throughout, and then we're also going to add a little dimension to give her hair a nice natural look. So now I'm going to take you through my tray, which I prepped for all the necessary tools that we'll need for this install. First, we have our Hairlocs Velcro separators, our small scissors, nylon thread, our C-shaped needle, our Hairlocs wefts, our weft cylinders already pre-threaded, Hairlocs sectioning clips, crimper, metal clips that will secure our wefts prior to sewing, and our Hairlocs razor. And don't forget, all the necessary tools for installs are available at hairlocs.com.
Okay, so Stacey's about to start sectioning me. We're gonna do 2 rows of 3 wefts, and that is just my personal liking. Usually we would do 3 rows, right, Stacey?
We can.
For most people, but I personally like 2 rows just because my hair is very thick and it's longer now, so we just do 2 rows now.
It gives her enough of the coverage that she needs, where my hair is not as thick as hers and not as long. So sometimes I like a little small row right at my nape, just for extra fullness and coverage. But I've also, as I've done Melissa's hair over time, learned that sometimes the 2 rows is plenty for a lot of people. Even myself, sometimes I like to switch and do 2 rows. But we do like a nice U shape to hit all those areas that she needs length.
Extra coverage. All right, do you think we can come forward a little bit here, Stacey, where the wefts will come closer to my face, just for a little bit more coverage if the weft reaches?
So even if it doesn't, our wefts are 11 inches wide. So one thing we can do is offset. So as she said earlier, she's gonna have 3 wefts per row. So if they don't reach all the way around, I'll measure them. You can also offset to where they're gonna get the coverage that they need right around the face. But you also wanna keep your perimeters in mind and do about 1 inch to 2 fingers back, just for comfort and being able to cover those wefts. Okay, before I start putting my cylinders in, I like to just double check and see how that weft is gonna sit. And Melissa does like it pretty close to her face. And these are actually gonna fit pretty perfect to where we don't have to offset those corners. They're all just gonna lay nice and flat and together on one weft. So I'm gonna start her cylinders. I typically like to start right in the middle of the row and work my way out, but everyone's different. Melissa?
I work left to right. I always do. I don't know if it's because I'm left-handed too, but I always start from side to side. I don't start in the middle.
So everybody has kind of like their own flow that will start being like the best way that they approach their extensions. Okay, I'm going to thread my first cylinder. Like I said, I'm just right in the back of the middle of the first row. I am going to thread her natural using my threader. And I don't want to over direct or elevate anything. A lot of times I use my nails for my tools. So some people will use a rat tail comb, keeping everything nice and clean. I wear my nails long, so they typically end up being my tools. I use my crimper and bring that right to the top. And I like to clamp 3 times just to make sure it's nice and secure. One thing we didn't talk about earlier was our color matching the cylinders. Her hair's dark, even though she's blonde, you would still use her root color for the cylinders. So I chose dark brown. And I'm just gonna thread those throughout the row.
So last night I toned my hair and the color that we color matched was just slightly off. So we color dipped the extensions in violet shampoo and now they match perfectly.
It's gonna be a nice seamless blend for her.
Yes. So excited.
Extensions take so easy to like purple dipping. So we only had to dip them like 3 times and rinse before they had the perfect amount of coolness to match her hair.
And the good thing about Wefts is even if the color's a little bit off at the end, it's always ends up like blending perfectly. That looks really good.
It's matching up almost
I'm so
perfect.
glad we color dipped them.
Me too.
Yeah.
So now that all the cylinders are in, I like to take my weft and go ahead and check to see where the weft is gonna end. And I'm gonna offset this row just a little because her right side is heavier. So I wanna go a little farther forward, and where the weft ends, there's 1 cylinder too much. So I'm gonna take 1 cylinder out on the left side, and then that's gonna offset it perfectly to give her a little heavier side where she parts her hair.
Since I'm a stylist, I'm just like double checking, but if I was Stacey, I would just face towards the mirror and kind of put the weft against before it's even sewed in, just to see if that's gonna look too off, and it's not, it's gonna look good. Okay, before you offset it, before it's sewed in, because you don't wanna sew it in before it's offset. Okay, yeah, that looks
now
really good.
We'll secure the wefts, and we talked a little bit about how she wanted some dimension. So we have a couple different colors that before I start sewing, I'm going to secure on and let her pick, as a stylist point of view, what she thinks she would like the best. For a client, you would be able to tell as you're securing that weft if you're happy with the color blend without asking the client. Would you ask your client if they like the color blend, or would you only do that when we're working on each other?
I think I would only do that when we're working on each other.
You don't want your client to think you've second guessed it.
Yes, yeah, you don't want them to second guess you for sure. Okay, that looks good. So we're doing the darker piece on the bottom row of the sandwich, just because my natural hair is so dark. So when I ever want to pull my hair up in a ponytail, that blonde doesn't peek through, and it's the darker piece showing if it ever does show.
So with this bottom row, we're adding 3 wefts that will be stacked on top of each other. And like Melissa said, she likes the darker one at the bottom. That way it blends with her natural for ponytails. But I'm gonna start by securing, before we do any sewing, with our little metal Hairlocs clips. And I'm gonna secure it 1 weft at a time along the row. And it's easier to do 1 weft, because if you start stacking them and they get off center, you don't really know where it went wrong. And what I typically do is down into the weft, and also on each side, I'll secure it just from the side. So I will do that all the way around.
Do those clips come in the Hairlocs kit?
They do.
They're so cute.
So now I'm gonna add the second weft to this row, and I'm gonna go in and use the same clips in the same areas, but just add 1 weft at a time, just so I keep that row clean, because whenever I'm sewing, I don't wanna have a bunch of like bubbles or have a hard time finding the pockets or checking for the wefts as I'm sewing. I just want a nice clean row right from the start.
If you don't have a clean row when you're stitching, it can leave, what are they called? Pockets, we call them pockets. And that can cause for your beads to slip out over in between your move ups. So you always want to have clean sections, clean work.
Clean rows, clean sections. Okay, so I'm gonna add her last weft for this row before I start sewing. These wefts lay so flat that putting 3 on one row is still so comfortable for a client. You want to take a look before I start sewing? They're not.
Oh, yeah, that one's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Blends with your natural.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start stitching on this side, but since I've always trained and we've always done the same thing, I've always stitched left-handed. And then I figured out if I stitched right-handed, I have more security.
Is it easier for you now?
Yes, it
Oh
took a
my
while.
gosh.
It did take a while to try to figure out the difference, but whenever we're stitching closed and open and all of our blanket stitching, I was doing everything opposite and couldn't figure out why, and it was because I was working.
You were always watching me.
I was working left-handed instead of right-handed, so now that I work right-handed, it all just flows nicely. So what I'm gonna do now is start sewing her wefts. These are sewn a little different because we start from the second cylinder outside pocket, and you always want to make sure you don't sew through the bead. So if you sew through the bead, Melissa probably knows as well as anyone that when you come in for a move up, that it's harder to lift that bead. It's actually almost impossible. So that's why you always want to make sure that you're not sewing through the bead. You're only going to sew through the pockets. You have your clients that come in for a quick adjustment, and if you've sewn through that bead, it definitely isn't as quick as you plan.
It's impossible to move them up.
Yes.
When I learned to do sew-ins, I was doing the stitch through the bead, and it's impossible to move them up at the adjustments. You have to completely take them out and put them back in.
And when you have those adjustments coming in and it's so quick and easy on them, if you have to readjust because of like sewing through a bead, it's just not fun for you. So I've started on the second cylinder. I am doing open blanket stitches through each pocket, not sewing through the cylinder, only sewing through the pockets. And when I get to this corner, I'm going to anchor those wefts, all 3 at the same time since they're not offset. And then we start sewing the opposite way. So now that I'm to the corner pocket, I'm gonna do at least 3 open blanket stitches, securing those wefts down. Getting closer and closer to the edge with each stitch. Does that feel okay?
Is that on that last bead, Stacey?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is my second. And I will do 1 more stitch, securing that corner down, and then I will start sewing across the weft. And since I'm right-handed, I'm starting on the right side and then I'll sew to the left. Melissa's opposite. She's left-handed, so when she's sewing, she'll start on the left.
Opposite, yes.
All right, so I have secured that corner. That's called an anchor. And now I'm gonna go across with closed blanket and open blanket stitches through each pocket. So the first will be a closed, pulling tight, always keeping the tension on your thread up. And that's a big thing because when we first started doing sew-ins, sometimes I would wonder like, why is my thread not laying on top of the weft? Why does it not look as clean? And I started noticing if I wasn't pulling my tension upwards, then the thread would go downwards onto the weft. But you want it to sit right on top. Another little tip for y'all is matching your thread. We also are using dark brown thread because that matches her natural. So if you were doing someone with lighter hair, a lighter natural color, you would probably want to use a dark blonde on their thread. But this is going to just blend very seamlessly into her natural. As I'm sewing, I take my metal clips out as I go, just so they're not in the way.
That feels really good.
How does it feel?
It feels really good.
You want it to feel nice and secure for them. Crazy, right?
Yes.
If I have any crosshairs trying to get in, I just take one of those clips and clip up just a little, just to keep everything nice and clean like we were talking about. So one thing to keep your stitches nice and clean is you can hold your finger right underneath where you're stitching to also prevent crosshairs from getting in those stitches. It's just uncomfortable for your client if you do get a little messy with your stitching. Okay, I finished her first row. And how does it feel?
It feels amazing.
Super flat to the scalp, even though it's three
it's so
bundles.
light. Like, it doesn't feel heavy at all.
So she's nice and secured. We've got the stitching through all the pockets, and we're gonna go ahead and section for her next row. Pull it forward and see what you think. I offset it.
Yeah. Okay.
You like that?
Yeah. So Stacey, do you have any clients that intimidate you?
I feel like whenever I'm working on like fellow stylists, it's probably the most, because I want to say like, okay, do you like this? And I start second guessing myself like, oh, do you want it like this? Do you want it like that? And most of the time all of y'all are like, just do it. I don't know. But then you also know what you like. So I like to get the feedback. What about you?
I don't know. I'm not really nervous with color, but I do have 2 clients that make me really nervous. And I told her because she wanted to go dark, but she was platinum blonde. And so I took her to dark, and then we did a rooted dark to blonde extensions, right? And so, you know, whenever you go dark in one session from blonde, like those tips tend to grab the dark really like a lot. Right. So when she saw her, she was like, no, I told you I didn't want to go this dark. And I'm like, it matches your extensions. And she's like, no, I said it's gonna lighten up. So she leaves, and I felt so bad. You feel defeated after a day of work. Yes. And for her to tell you she didn't like it. So the next day she's like, I shampooed my hair, I love it, thank you so much, you were right. And I told her, you are the only person that really makes me question my abilities as a hairstylist. Because only I can really, being behind the chair, can judge what I need to do to make it look good in the long run. Right. I had a client that used to be like that. She would leave and be happy, and then maybe someone would say, oh, you went lighter, you went darker, I liked it like this, and then it would make her second guess it. But then when she would first see it, she'd always love it. So, you know, I think we just as stylists are so hard on ourselves. We really are. And then we just have to know, like, we know what we're doing, and we just have to go with our first judgment, and just like when I told you to take that U down just now. Yes, so then we know, like, we know what we like, but then we also know maybe what we don't like, so we get to go off of that. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for your hair. A little tip I like to use when threading my C-shaped needle, taking my nylon thread and going at least 2 arms length for the thread. Just because you don't want to have an issue where you run out of thread on one row,
but also you want to make sure you have enough. Everyone threads it a little different.
So I thread it with my foot. I just kind of wrap the thread around my foot and bring the thread all the way up to my shoulders, and then I cut there, and it's always the perfect amount of thread because you don't want to get to threading and then be back here and run out of thread and have to re-stitch.
The first time I did any sewing on Melissa's hair, I ran out of thread. Was it in the first row? Maybe in the first or second row. And I was panicking. I didn't know what to do. She walked me through it, but still, it's not a good thing. It's not a good feeling to run out of thread and have to do your anchors and start back over. You want to just make sure you have enough thread in the beginning. Okay guys, we're all finished with Melissa's new weft install.
And now I'm my own walking billboard.
When you go to hairlocs.com and sign up, you will receive a free welcome package. Inside of this package is a 25% off coupon that you can use to be your own walking billboard too.
And why not use it on yourself? It's the best way to bring in potential clients and grow your business.
When you yourself are wearing extensions, you can tell your clients exactly how they feel and what to expect. If you have any other questions, visit us on our social media platforms
or on our website, hairlocs.com.
And you can give us a call, 1-855-HAIRLOCS.